Picture a luxurious yacht gliding through the English Channel, its elegant passengers hiding secrets as dark as the sea. When wealthy tycoon Sir Reginald Harrowby is found stabbed in a locked study, only Hercule Poirot's brilliant mind can unravel the web of lies, love, and betrayal. A pearl earring, a stopped clock, a vial of poison, every clue points to a shocking truth. Will Poirot's little grey cells expose the killer before the sapphire yacht reaches shore? Dive into a classic Agatha Christie-style mystery where no one is what they seem. Chapter 1. The sapphire yacht sails. The late summer sun cast a golden sheen over the calm waters of the English Channel, where the sapphire yacht gleamed like a jewel against the horizon. The vessel, a marvel of polished teak and gleaming brass, cut through the gentle waves with an elegance that belied the tensions simmering among its passengers. Owned by the wealthy industrialist Sir Reginald Harrowby, the yacht was renowned not only for its opulence, but for the exclusivity of its guest list. On this particular voyage, a select group had been invited for a week-long cruise to the French Riviera, a journey promising luxury, leisure, and, as it would soon transpire, something far darker. Captain Arthur Hastings, ever the faithful chronicler of Hercule Poirot's exploits, stood at the yacht's rail, his eyes tracing the distant coastline. The sea air was crisp, carrying the faint tang of salt and the promise of adventure. Hastings had been surprised by Poirot's acceptance of Sir Reginald's invitation, for the little Belgian detective was not one for idle pleasures. Yet Poirot had insisted, his moustache twitching with that peculiar glint in his eye that suggested he anticipated more than mere relaxation. "It is not the sea, mon ami," Poirot had said that morning, adjusting his perfectly knotted tie as they boarded, "but the people who sail upon it that interest Hercule Poirot. The human heart, Hastings, it is a map more intricate than any charted ocean." The guest list was, as expected, a constellation of wealth, influence, and hidden motives. Sir Reginald Harrowby, a man of 60, with a barrel chest and a voice that boomed like a foghorn, presided over the gathering with the confidence of one accustomed to command. His wife, Lady Eleanor Harrowby, a strikingly beautiful woman of 40, moved with a grace that seemed to defy the weight of her diamond necklace. Her eyes, however, betrayed a restlessness that Hastings noted with curiosity. Then there was Miss Clara Langley, a young heiress whose fortune derived from her late father's shipping empire. Her laughter was bright, but her glances towards Sir Reginald carried a sharpness that did not escape Hastings' notice. Beside her was Dr. Malcolm Everett, a physician of quiet demeanour, his spectacles glinting as he observed the group with clinical detachment. Mrs. Beatrice Langley, Clara's expression suggesting disapproval of the entire affair. The party was rounded out by Mr. Victor Crane, a playwright of some repute whose sardonic wit had already grated on Hastings's nerves, and Miss Diana Trent, a retired actress whose flamboyant gestures and throaty laugh dominated the dining saloon. Lastly, there was Mr. Julian Fairchild, Sir Reginald's private secretary, a thin, nervous man whose eyes darted about as if expecting calamity at any moment. The first evening aboard the Sapphire yacht was marked by a sumptuous dinner in the Grand Saloon, where crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over the mahogany table. The conversation was polite, even jovial, but Hastings sensed an undercurrent of unease. Sir Reginald, flushed with wine, regaled the group with tales of his business triumphs, while Lady Eleanor's smile grew increasingly strained. Clara Langley toyed with her fork, her eyes fixed on some distant point, and Dr. Everett murmured occasional remarks about the medicinal properties of sea air. It was during dessert, a delicate lemon soufflé, that the first hint of discord surfaced. Victor Crane, his voice sharp with mockery, raised his glass. "To Sir Reginald," he said, "whose generosity ensures we all sail in such splendid company, though one wonders if the price of such luxury is ever truly paid." The table fell silent. Lady Eleanor's hand tightened around her napkin, and Julian Fairchild's fork clattered against his plate. Sir Reginald's laugh was hearty, but it did not reach his eyes. "Crane, you always did have a flair for the dramatic," he said, though his tone carried a warning. Poirot, seated at the far end of the table, sipped his tisane with maddening calm. His green eyes, sharp as cut emeralds, flickered over the group, noting every gesture, every glance. Hastings, accustomed to his friend's methods, knew that Poirot was already cataloguing the tensions that would later prove significant. The evening ended without further incident, and the guests retired to their cabins. Hastings, however, found sleep elusive. The gentle rocking of the yacht, the distant hum of the engines, and the faint creak of the woodwork conspired to keep him awake. He rose, donning his dressing gown, and stepped onto the deck for a breath of air. The night was clear, the stars a glittering canopy above the dark sea. He was not alone. Clara Langley stood at the rail, her shawl slipping from her shoulders. "Captain Hastings," she said, startled. "I didn't expect to find anyone awake." "Nor I, Miss Langley," Hastings replied, offering a polite smile. "The sea has a way of keeping one restless, does it not?" She nodded, but her expression was troubled. "It's not the sea," she said softly. "It's this yacht. There's something wrong here. I can feel it." Before Hastings could press her further, a shadow moved at the edge of his vision. Julian Fairchild emerged from the companionway in the moonlight. "Miss Langley, you shouldn't be out here alone," he said, his voice tight with anxiety. "It's not safe." Clara's laugh was brittle.
"Safe? On a yacht? In the middle of the sea? Where could be safer, Mr. Fairchild?"
Fairchild said nothing, but his eyes darted toward the darkened windows of the saloon. He escorted Clara back to her cabin, leaving Hastings alone with his thoughts. The encounter, brief as it was, left him uneasy. He returned to his cabin, resolving to speak with Poirot in the morning. The next day dawned bright, the sea a mirror of turquoise and gold. The guests gathered for breakfast, their conversation lighter than the previous evening. Poirot, immaculate in a cream-colored suit, joined them late, his moustache waxed to perfection. He declined the offered bacon and eggs, opting instead for a single brioche and a cup of black coffee. "Mon ami," he said to Hastings, drawing him aside. "You were restless last night, no? I observed you on deck. Tell me, what did you see?" Hastings recounted his encounter with Clara and Fairchild. Noting the heiress's unease and the secretary's nervousness, Poirot listened intently, his fingers steepled before him. "Interesting," he murmured. "The young lady feels a shadow, and the secretary fears it. We must watch, Hastings. The little grey cells, they are already at work." The morning passed uneventfully, with the guests dispersing to various activities, reading, sunbathing, or playing cards in the saloon. Sir Reginald, however, was absent, and Lady Eleanor explained that he was attending to business in his private study. It was shortly before luncheon that the first scream shattered the yacht's tranquility. Hastings, who had been strolling the deck with Poirot, froze as the sound echoed from below. It was followed by another, and then a shout of alarm. The two men hurried toward the source, descending the narrow staircase to the lower deck. There in the corridor outside Sir Reginald's study, they found a scene of chaos. Lady Eleanor stood trembling, her hands pressed to her mouth. Clara Langley clung to her mother, her face ashen. Dr. Everett knelt beside a crumpled figure on the floor, his fingers probing for a pulse. It was Sir Reginald Harrowby, his face contorted in a rictus of agony, his eyes staring blankly at the ceiling. A small silver-handled dagger protruded from his chest, and a pool of blood stained the polished floor. "He's dead," Dr. Everett said, his voice steady but grim. "Stabbed through the heart. He's been dead for at least an hour." Poirot's eyes floating prison, and one among them was a murderer. Chapter 2. The Scene of the Crime. The air in the narrow corridor of the Sapphire Yacht was thick with the metallic tang of blood and the stifled gasps of the gathered guests. Sir Reginald Harrowby's body lay sprawled before his study door, the silver-handled dagger glinting cruelly in the soft light of the overhead lamps. Hercule Poirot stood motionless, his small, neat figure, a stark contrast to the chaos around him. His green eyes, sharp and unyielding, surveyed the scene with the precision of a watchmaker examining a delicate mechanism. Captain Hastings, at his side, felt his stomach churn, not from the sight of death, he had seen too much of that in his time, but from the palpable tension that hung over the group like a storm cloud. Lady Eleanor Harrowby, her face pale as alabaster, clutched a handkerchief to her lips, her eyes darting between her husband's body and the faces of those around her. Clara Langley, still clinging to her mother, Mrs. Beatrice Langley, seemed on the verge of collapse, her breaths coming in short, sharp gasps. Dr. Malcolm Everett rose from his examination of the body, wiping his hands on a cloth with clinical detachment. Victor Crane, the playwright, leaned against the wall, his sardonic smirk replaced by a grim expression, while Miss Diana Trent, the retired actress, stood frozen, her theatrical poise shattered. Julian Fairchild, Sir Reginald's secretary, hovered at the edge of the group, his fingers twitching nervously at his sides. Poirot stepped forward, his movements deliberate, his polished shoes avoiding the spreading stain of blood. "Mesdames et messieurs," he said, his voice calm yet commanding, "we must compose ourselves. A crime has been committed, and it is for Hercule Poirot to unravel its threads. But first, we must preserve the scene. Dr. Everett, you have confirmed the death." "Yes," the doctor replied, his tone measured. "Sir Reginald was stabbed through the heart. Death would have been instantaneous, or near enough. I estimate the time of death to be between 10 and 11 this morning." Poirot nodded, his moustache twitching slightly. "Bon. And the door to the study, it is locked, oui?" Julian Fairchild spoke up, his voice trembling. "Yes, Mr. Poirot. Sir Reginald always locked his study when he worked. He valued his privacy." "Privacy or secrecy?" Poirot murmured, almost to himself. He knelt beside the body, his gloved hands hovering over the dagger without touching it. "This weapon, it is not unfamiliar. A letter opener, perhaps? From the desk of Sir Reginald himself?" Lady Eleanor's gasp was audible. "Yes," she whispered, "it's his. He kept it on his desk. But how—" "Is moved." Hastings, grateful for a task to steady his nerves, began to catalogue the scene under Poirot's direction. The corridor was narrow, barely wide enough for two to pass abreast, with the study door on one side and a small porthole on the other, offering a view of the endless sea. The dagger, embedded in Sir Reginald's chest, was indeed a letter opener, its silver handle engraved with the initials R.H., also increasing the influing things. There was no sign of a struggle, no overturned furniture, no torn clothing, only the stark reality of the body and the blood. Poirot's attention turned to the locked door. "Monsieur Fairchild," he said, "you have the key to this study?" Fairchild fumbled in his pocket, producing a small brass key. "Yes, here it is. Sir Reginald entrusted me with a spare in case of emergencies." "An emergency, indeed," Poirot said dryly. He took the key and unlocked the door, revealing a compact study lined with bookshelves and dominated by a heavy mahogany desk. Papers were neatly arranged. A fountain pen lay capped beside an inkwell, and a half-finished letter bore Sir Reginald's bold handwriting. Nothing appeared disturbed. Yet Poirot's eyes lingered on the desk, then moved to the porthole, which was securely latched. "Curious," he murmured. "The door is locked, the porthole closed, and yet a man is dead in the corridor. How did the murderers strike, and how did they escape?" The yacht's captain, a grizzled man named Captain Whitaker, arrived with two crew members, their faces grim. "Mr. Poirot," Whitaker said, "we've secured the deck and informed the authorities in Dover. They'll meet us when we make port tomorrow, but until then this is your show." "Merci, Capitaine," Poirot said. "I shall require a list of all passengers and crew, their movements this morning, and access to their cabins should it become necessary." Whittaker nodded, though his expression suggested he was unaccustomed to taking orders from a diminutive Belgian. Anything else? Oui. Ensure that no one leaves the yacht and that this corridor remains undisturbed. The little grey cells, they require clarity. As the crew dispersed to carry out Poirot's instructions, he turned to the guests. Mesdames et messieurs, I must ask you to recount your movements between 9 and 11 this morning. Every detail, it is important. We shall begin with you, Lady Eleanor. Lady Eleanor straightened, her composure returning like a mask slipping into place. I was in my cabin reading, she said. I didn't see Reginald after breakfast. He said he had work to do. And you, Miss Langley? Poirot's gaze shifted to Clara. I was on the deck, Clara said, her voice barely above a whisper. I was sketching the sea. Mother was with me for a time, then she went to rest. Mrs. Beatrice Langley nodded. I was in my cabin, the saloon, reviewing some medical journals. I saw no one until the scream. Victor Crane shrugged. I was writing in my cabin. A new play, you see. Inspiration doesn't wait for murder. Miss Diana Trent's laugh was brittle. I was practicing my lines on the aft deck. Alone, I'm afraid. No audience for an old actress. Julian Fairchild hesitated. I was in the library, sorting Sir Reginald's correspondence. He asked me to fetch some documents at around 10, but the study door was locked, and he didn't answer when I knocked. Poirot's eyes narrowed. You knocked, and there was no response. At what time, precisely? 10:15? Perhaps 10:20? Fairchild said, his hands twisting together. I thought he was busy, so I left. Bon, Poirot said. We shall verify these alibis. For now, I ask that you return to your cabins and remain there until I call for you. Captain Hastings, you will assist me in examining the study further. As the guests dispersed, their faces a mix of fear and suspicion, Hastings followed Poirot into the study. The room was orderly, almost obsessively so, with every item in its place. Poirot moved to the desk, his fingers tracing the edge of the blotter. Observe, Hastings, he said, pointing to a faint smudge of ink on the desk's surface. Sir Reginald was writing, yet the pen is capped, and the ink is dry. Why did he stop? Hastings frowned. Perhaps he was interrupted. Précisément. But by whom? And how? The door was locked, the porthole secure. The answer? It lies in the details. Poirot's gaze fell on a small brass clock on the desk. Its hands stopped at 10:12. Interesting, he said. The clock, it is not ticking. A coincidence or a clue? Before Hastings could respond, a faint sound caught their attention, a soft creak from the corridor. Poirot moved swiftly, opening the door to find no one there. But on the floor, just beyond the bloodstain, lay a single pearl earring, its luster catching the light. Mon ami, Poirot said, picking it up with his handkerchief. The plot, it thickens. This earring, it belongs to someone on this yacht. And that someone, they were here, after the murder. Hastings felt a chill. The sapphire yacht was a floating labyrinth of secrets, and Poirot was only beginning to unravel its threads. Chapter 3. The Arrival of Poirot's Method. The sapphire yacht seemed to hold its breath as the reality of Sir Reginald Harrowby's murder settled over its polished decks. The once vibrant chatter of the guests had been replaced by a heavy silence, broken only by the creak of the ship's timbers and the distant hum of the engines. Hercule Poirot, however, was undeterred by the atmosphere of dread. Arrive in Dover. Captain Hastings, trailing behind, marvelled at his friend's composure, though he could not shake the unease that clung to him like damp sea air. Poirot had requested that the guests remain in their cabins, but he had no intention of letting the morning's events stagnate. Mon ami, he said to Hastings, his voice low but firm. The crime, it is fresh, and the minds of our suspects, they are still unsettled. Now is the moment to observe, to question, to set the little grey cells in motion. They returned to the Grand Saloon, where Captain Whittaker had assembled a makeshift headquarters for Poirot's investigation. A long mahogany table served as a desk, and Poirot had already requested the ship's log, a deck plan, and a detailed list of the crew's movements. The captain, though initially skeptical of this diminutive detective, had begun to defer to Poirot's authority, sensing the Belgian's unshakable confidence. "First, Hastings," Poirot said, spreading the deck plan before him. "We must establish the timeline. Sir Reginald was last seen alive at breakfast, oui? That was at 9 o'clock. Dr. Everett places the time of death between 10 and 11. Monsieur Fairchild knocked at 10:15 and received no answer. The body was discovered just before noon. This gives us a window, narrow but significant." Hastings nodded, studying the deck plan. The study was located on the lower deck, accessible only by a single staircase from the main deck, and a narrow corridor with cabins on either side. The porthole in the study was too small for a person to pass through, and the locked door suggested that the murderer had either entered and exited with a key, or found another means of escape. "But Poirot," Hastings said, frowning. "The door was locked, and Fairchild had the only spare key. Could someone have picked the lock?" Poirot's moustache twitched. "Possible, but unlikely. A picked lock leaves traces, scratches, misalignment. I examined the lock, and it is pristine. No, Hastings. The solution is not mechanical, but psychological. The murderer, they wish us to believe the impossible, but Hercule Poirot does not believe in impossibilities." He turned his attention to the pearl earring, now resting in his handkerchief on the table. "This," he said, holding it up to the light, "is our first true clue. It is elegant, expensive, and not easily lost by accident. Someone was careless, or perhaps desperate, in the moments after the crime." Hastings leaned closer. "Do you think it belongs to Lady Eleanor? She was wearing pearls last night." "Perhaps," Poirot said, "but we must not assume. Every lady aboard this yacht may own such an earring, and even a gentleman could have carried it. We shall inquire, but discreetly." Poirot, accustomed to scrutiny, but her hands betrayed her, twisting the edge of her shawl. Poirot rose, offering a courteous bow. "Madame," he said, "I regret the necessity of this conversation under such tragic circumstances, but you will permit me to ask a few questions." Lady Eleanor nodded, seating herself with a composure that seemed forced. "Of course, Mr. Poirot. I want to help in any way I can. Bon, let us begin with this morning. You say you were in your cabin, reading between 9 and 11. Can anyone confirm this?" She hesitated, her eyes flickering to the deck plan on the table. "No, I was alone. Reginald and we often kept to ourselves in the mornings. He had his work and I had my books." "And you heard nothing unusual? No shouts? No footsteps in the corridor outside your cabin?" "Nothing," she said, her voice firm but her fingers tightening on her shawl. "The first I knew of it was Clara's scream." Poirot's gaze softened, but his questions did not. "Madame, forgive me, but I must ask about your husband's relationships. Was there anyone aboard who bore him ill will?" Lady Eleanor's lips parted, then closed. "Reginald was a powerful man," she said carefully. "Power attracts envy, resentment. But I cannot imagine anyone hating him enough to do this." Poirot nodded, making a mental note of her hesitation. "One final question, madame. Do you recognize this?" He held up the pearl earring, watching her closely. Her eyes widened briefly, but she shook her head. "No, it's not mine. I have similar earrings, but I was wearing both of mine this morning. You can check." "Merci, madame," Poirot said, dismissing her with a polite smile. As she left, he turned to Hastings. "She is composed, but there is a crack in her facade. We shall see if it whitens." Next was Clara Langley, who entered the saloon with her mother, Mrs. Beatrice Langley, at her side. Clara's face was pale, her eyes red-rimmed, but she held her head high. Poirot noted the protective grip of Mrs. Langley's hand on her daughter's arm. "Mademoiselle Langley," Poirot began, "you were sketching on the deck this morning. Did you see or hear anything unusual?" Clara shook her head. "I was focused on my sketchbook. The sea was so calm, so beautiful. I didn't notice anything until Mother came to fetch me for luncheon. And then we heard the scream." "And you, Madame Langley?" Poirot turned to the older woman. "You were napping, oui?" "Yes," Mrs. Langley said, her voice sharp. "I was in my cabin. I heard nothing until Clara say. I felt it most strongly around Sir Reginald." "Interesting," Poirot said. He produced the earring. "And this? Does it belong to you?" Clara shook her head, but Mrs. Langley's eyes narrowed. "That's not Clara's," she said quickly. "She doesn't wear pearls. They're too old-fashioned for her." Poirot thanked them and moved on to Dr. Everett, whose calm demeanor contrasted sharply with the other's nerves. "I was in the saloon reading," the doctor said. "I saw no one until the commotion began. As for the earring, I'm afraid I wouldn't know. I don't pay attention to such things." Victor Crane was next, his sardonic tone returning as he lounged in his chair. "I was writing, as I said. Murder makes for excellent inspiration, though I'd prefer it stayed in my plays. That earring could belong to anyone. Diana Trent's always dripping with jewelry." Miss Diana Trent, when questioned, laughed nervously. "Oh, that's not mine, Mr. Poirot. I prefer diamonds. And I was on the aft deck practicing my lines. No one saw me, but I swear I didn't go near the lower deck." Finally, Julian Fairchild entered, his hands trembling. "I told you, I knocked at 10:15 and Sir Reginald didn't answer. I didn't have the key then. I fetched it from my cabin after the body was found." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "And yet, monsieur, you did not mention seeing anyone in the corridor, not even a shadow?" Fairchild paled. "No, no one." As the interviews concluded, Poirot sat back, his fingers steepled. "Hastings, the alibis. They are too perfect, too solitary. No one saw anyone, yet a man is dead. And this earring, it is a beacon pointing to someone who was careless. We must search the cabins, but first, we return to the study. There is something I have missed." They descended to the lower deck, where the study door remained locked. Poirot examined the clock again, noting its stopped hands. 10:12, he murmured, a moment frozen in time. But why? As he spoke, a faint glint caught his eye beneath the desk. A single cufflink, engraved with the initials V.C. Poirot's mustache twitched. Victor Crane, perhaps? Or another clue meant to mislead? The game, Hastings. It grows more intricate. Chapter 4. The Web of Questions. The Sapphire yacht glided through the calm waters of the English Channel, its serene exterior belying the storm of suspicion brewing within. The Grand Saloon, where Hercule Poirot had established his temporary headquarters, was now a crucible of tension, its polished mahogany and glittering chandeliers mocking the grim purpose of the gathering. Captain Hastings stood by the window, watching the sea's gentle ripples, his mind racing with the details of Sir Reginald Harrowby's murder. Poirot, seated at the table, was as composed as ever. The initials, V.C. "Mon ami," Poirot said, his voice cutting through Hastings' reverie. "The mind, it must be orderly, like a garden. Each clue, it is a seed, and we must plant it carefully to see what grows. This cufflink, it is most suggestive, no?" Hastings nodded, though his brow furrowed. "It points to Victor Crane, doesn't it? Those are his initials. But it seems too obvious, Poirot. Surely a murderer wouldn't be so careless as to leave such a clear marker." Poirot's green eyes twinkled. "Précisément, Hastings. The obvious, it is often a trap. But we shall test this trap and see who set it. First, we must search the cabins. The earring, the cufflink, they belong to someone aboard this yacht, and their hiding places may reveal more than their owners intend. With Captain Whittaker's reluctant approval, Poirot and Hastings began a systematic search of the guests' cabins, starting with Sir Reginald and Lady Eleanor's suite. The room was a study in opulence, with silk drapes, a four-poster bed, and a vanity laden with perfumes and jewelry. Poirot's eyes scanned the room with surgical precision, pausing at the vanity where a pair of pearl earrings lay in a velvet box. He compared them to the one found in the corridor. "They are similar," he murmured, "but not identical. The clasp on our clue is unique, a small rose motif. Lady Eleanor's earrings, they lack this detail. She spoke the truth, perhaps, but we must verify." Hastings, meanwhile, noticed a locked drawer in the bedside table. "Poirot, should we open this?" "Mais oui," Poirot said, producing a small tool from his pocket, a testament to his preparedness. The drawer revealed a bundle of letters tied with a ribbon. Poirot scanned them quickly, his expression unreadable. "Love letters, Hastings, but not between Sir Reginald and his wife. They are addressed to 'My Dearest' and signed with a single initial, V. "Victor Crane again?" Hastings asked, his excitement rising. "Perhaps," Poirot said, "but the handwriting, it is not his. I observed his notebook in the saloon, a different script entirely. These letters, they are a woman's hand. We shall keep this discovery to ourselves for now." The search of Clara Langley's cabin yielded little. A sketchbook filled with seascapes, a few novels, and a locket containing a photograph of her late father. Mrs. Beatrice Langley's cabin was similarly unremarkable, though Poirot noted a bottle of sleeping draught on her nightstand. "She claims to have been napping," he said, "yet the bottle is full. Curious, no?" Dr. Malcolm Everett's cabin was sparse, with medical texts and a small case of instruments. Nothing suggested involvement, but bottles, but no cufflinks matching the one found. Poirot did, however, discover a crumpled note in the wastebasket. "Meet me at 10. R." The handwriting matched Sir Reginald's. "This," Poirot said, "is significant. Crane did not mention a meeting, yet here is evidence of one. Why did he conceal it?" Miss Diana Trent's cabin was a theatrical shrine, with costumes, scripts, and a vanity overflowing with jewelry, but no pearl earrings with a rose motif. Julian Fairchild's cabin was meticulously organized with files of correspondence and a spare key to the study, as he had claimed. Yet Poirot's sharp eyes caught a faint smudge of blood on the edge of a handkerchief, hastily tucked into a drawer. "Blood, Hastings," Poirot said, holding it up. "Not enough for a wound, but enough to suggest contact with the scene. Fairchild, he is nervous for a reason." The search is complete. Poirot returned to the saloon, where he summoned Victor Crane for a second interview. The playwright sauntered in, his smirk barely masking his unease. Poirot held up the cufflink. "Monsieur Crane," he said, "this was found near the body. The initials, they are yours, no?" Crane's smirk faltered. I suppose they could be. I lost a cufflink a few days ago, but I wasn't in that corridor, Poirot. I told you, I was writing." "And this note?" Poirot produced the crumpled paper. "Sir Reginald requested a meeting at 10, yet you did not mention it." Crane's eyes narrowed. "I didn't go. He wanted to discuss funding my next play, but I was busy. I ignored it." Poirot's mustache twitched. "You ignored a man who held your financial future. Most interesting. And this letter, signed V. It is not your hand, but perhaps you know the author." Crane's face darkened. "I don't know what you're implying, Poirot, but I'm no murderer. Those letters could be anyone's." "Indeed," Poirot said, dismissing him. As Crane left, Poirot turned to Hastings. "He lies. But about what? The meeting, the cufflink, or something deeper? We must press further." Next, Poirot summoned Julian Fairchild, presenting the blood-stained handkerchief. Fairchild's face went white. I cut my hand this morning," he stammered. "Shaving. It's nothing to do with Sir Reginald." Then you will not mind if Dr. Everett examines this cut? Poirot asked, his tone deceptively mild. Fairchild hesitated, then rolled up his sleeve to reveal a small, fresh cut on his palm. See? Just a nick. Poirot nodded, but his eyes were cold. Merci, monsieur. You may go. As Fairchild fled, Hastings whispered, Do you believe him, Poirot? The cut. It is convenient. Guests' alibis. The steward, a young man named Tompkins, reported serving coffee to Sir Reginald at 9:30, confirming the study door was locked when he left. No one else had been seen near the lower deck until the body was discovered. Poirot returned to the study, his attention drawn again to the stopped clock. 10:12, he murmured. Why does his stop? A power failure? A deliberate act? Or something else? He examined the clock closely, noting a faint scratch on its base. Hastings, this clock was moved. Not broken, but stopped. Someone wished to fix a moment in time. As they left the study, Poirot paused in the corridor, his eyes on the porthole opposite the door. He opened it, peering out at the sea. The porthole, it is small, but not impossible. A weapon could be disposed of here, perhaps. But the letter opener, it was Sir Reginald's own. The murderer used what was at hand. Hastings frowned. But why leave the cufflink and earring? They're too obvious, Poirot. Obvious, yes, Poirot said, but not accidental. They are breadcrumbs meant to lead us astray, or to the truth. We must follow them, but with care. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the yacht in the twilight, Poirot sat back, his fingers steepled. The web. It is woven, Hastings. Each suspect, they pull a thread. Love, greed, fear. But which thread leads to murder? Tomorrow, we shall tug harder. The sapphire yacht sailed on, its secrets locked as tightly as Sir Reginald's study, and Poirot's little grey cells worked tirelessly to unlock them. Chapter 5. The Red Herrings Multiply. The sapphire yacht cut through the night, its engines a low hum beneath the starlit sky, but the tranquility of the sea could not quell the mounting unease among its passengers. The murder of Sir Reginald Harrowby had transformed the luxurious vessel into a floating cage, where every glance was laced with suspicion, and every word weighed for hidden meaning. Hercule Poirot, seated in the grand saloon, pored over his notes with the intensity of a scholar deciphering an ancient text. Captain Hastings, ever at his side, felt the weight of the investigation pressing upon him, his mind tangled with the clues and contradictions that seemed to multiply with each passing hour. Poirot, Hastings said, breaking the silence, this cufflink and earring, they point too neatly to Crane and perhaps Lady Eleanor. It's as if someone wants us to suspect them. Could it be a deliberate misdirection? Poirot's moustache twitched, a sure sign that his little grey cells were in motion. Mon ami, you touch upon the heart of the matter. In a murder such as this, the obvious is rarely the truth. The cufflink with VC, it screams Victor Crane, yet he claims to have lost it days ago. The earring, it suggests a woman, but with astray. The morning had dawned grey, with clouds gathering on the horizon, mirroring the storm brewing among the guests. Poirot had requested a second round of interviews, this time focusing on the relationships between the suspects and Sir Reginald. He began with Miss Diana Trent, whose theatrical flair had dimmed in the wake of the murder. She entered the saloon with a forced smile, her hands fluttering like nervous birds. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, seating herself, "this is all so dreadful. I can't imagine who would do such a thing to poor Reginald." "Poor Reginald, you say?" Poirot replied, his tone mild but his eyes sharp. "Yet I understand Sir Reginald was not universally beloved. Tell me, mademoiselle, what was your connection to him?" Diana's smile faltered. "We were acquaintances, nothing more. He admired my performances, you know. He was a patron of the arts, always generous with his support." "Generous, oui," Poirot said, leaning forward. "But perhaps demanding in return? There are rumors, mademoiselle, of Sir Reginald's expectations from those he supported." Diana's cheeks flushed, but she met his gaze. "If you're implying something improper, Mr. Poirot, you're mistaken. Reginald was a gentleman. Our relationship was professional. Poirot nodded, though his expression suggested he was not entirely convinced. And this morning, between 10 and 11, you were practicing your lines on the aft deck alone. No one saw you? No one, she said, her voice firm. I prefer solitude when I rehearse. Bon. And this earring. He held up the pearl with the rose motif. It is not yours. Diana shook her head. I told you, I prefer diamonds. Pearls are so passé. As she left, Poirot turned to Hastings. She defends her honor, but there is a tremor in her voice. She knows more than she says, perhaps about Sir Reginald's character. Next was Dr. Malcolm Everett, whose calm demeanor remained unshaken. Poirot produced the notebook found in his cabin, its cryptic entries marked with initials and dates. Doctor, these notes, R.H., among others, what do they signify? Everett adjusted his spectacles. They're patient records, Mr. Poirot. Initials and dates for consultations. Sir Reginald had a heart condition, you see. I was monitoring it. A heart condition? Poirot's eyes narrowed. Yet he was stabbed, not felled by illness. Did he consult you this morning? No, Everett said. I last saw him yesterday evening after dinner. He seemed in good spirits. Poirot made a note, then dismissed the doctor. A heart condition, he murmured to Hastings. It is a detail to remember. A man with a weak heart may be vulnerable.
Sir Reginald specifically? Clara hesitated, glancing at her mother, who gave a slight nod. He was very attentive to me, she said softly. Too attentive, perhaps? Mother didn't approve. Mrs. Beatrice Langley's lips tightened. Sir Reginald was a married man, Mr. Poirot. His interest in Clara was inappropriate. I told him so. And how did he respond? Poirot asked. He laughed it off, Mrs. Langley said, her voice cold. Said it was harmless admiration, but I saw how he looked at her. Poirot's gaze lingered on Clara. And you, mademoiselle? How did you feel about his attentions? Clara's hands twisted in her lap. I didn't like it, but he was powerful and I didn't want to make a scene. I avoided him as much as I could. As they left, Poirot turned to Hastings. Emotive, perhaps. A young woman, uncomfortable with a powerful man's advances, and a protective mother. But would they kill? We must dig deeper. The interviews continued, with Victor Crane maintaining his story of writing in his cabin, though his unease was palpable when Poirot'd about the note from Sir Reginald. I told you I didn't go, he snapped. He wanted money for my play, but I wasn't desperate enough to grovel. Julian Fairchild, question again about the blood-stained handkerchief, grew increasingly agitated. I told you it was a shaving cut, he insisted. I wasn't near the study when Sir Reginald was killed. Yet you knocked at 10:15, Poirot said, and found no answer. Did you see anyone in the corridor? Fairchild's eyes darted away. No one, I swear it. Poirot dismissed him, then sat back, his fingers steepled. He lies, Hastings. The blood, the nervousness, it points to something. But is he the murderer, or merely entangled in the web? The afternoon brought a new development. Captain Whitaker reported that a crew member, a deckhand named Harris, had seen Miss Diana Trent near the lower deck staircase at 10:30, despite her claim of being on the aft deck. When confronted, Diana's composure cracked. I may have gone below, briefly, she admitted. I needed a shawl from my cabin. It was chilly. At 10:30, Poirot asked. The timing. It is most convenient. And did you see Sir Reginald? No, she said too quickly. I didn't go near his study. Poirot let her go, but his expression was grim. She contradicts herself, Hastings. The aft deck, the cabin, the lower deck. The story shifts like the tide. As the day wore on, Poirot returned to the study, his attention drawn again to the stopped clock. But the clock? "It is a lie," Poirot said. "I suspect Sir Reginald died closer to 11, and the clock was stopped to suggest an earlier time. We must confirm with Dr. Everett." Before they could seek the doctor, a shout from the deck interrupted them. A crew member had found a torn piece of paper near the porthole in the corridor, a fragment of a letter, written in the same hand as those found in Sir Reginald's drawer. It read, "Must end. I cannot continue this way. V." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Another thread, Hastings. This V. It is the key. Is it Victor Crane or another? And why tear the letter, unless to hide its contents?" As the yacht sailed toward Dover, the web of lies and clues grew ever more tangled, and Poirot's little grey cells worked tirelessly to unravel the truth. Chapter 6. A Clue in the Details. The Sapphire yacht sailed steadily toward Dover, its gleaming exterior a stark contrast to the shadowed intrigues unfolding within. The late afternoon sun cast long, slanting rays across the deck, but the warmth did little to dispel the chill that had settled over the passengers. The murder of Sir Reginald Harrowby hung like a fog, clouding every interaction with suspicion. Hercule Poirot, seated in the grand saloon, was an island of calm amid the storm, his meticulous notes spread before him like a general's battle plan. Captain Hastings, ever loyal, stood nearby, his mind wrestling with the growing tangle of clues: the pearl earring, the cufflink, the stopped clock, the torn letter fragment, and the mysterious V. "Poirot," Hastings said, his voice low, "this letter fragment, it's another piece pointing to Victor Crane, isn't it? That V again. But it feels too neat, like someone's trying to pin this on him." Poirot's green eyes flickered with approval. "You begin to think like Poirot, mon ami. The V, it is a beacon, but whether it illuminates the truth or casts a shadow, we must determine. The clue in the detail, Hastings. It is always in the detail. This letter, it was torn, but not destroyed. Why leave it where it could be found? The murderer, they are clever, but not infallible." Poirot's first task was to revisit Dr. Malcolm Everett, whose medical expertise could clarify the timeline of Sir Reginald's death. They found the doctor in his cabin, reviewing his notebook with a furrowed brow. He looked up as Poirot knocked, his expression guarded. "Dr. Everett," Poirot began, "a point of clarification, if you please. You estimated Sir Reginald's time of death between 10 and 11, based on the body's condition. Can you be more precise?" Everett adjusted his spectacles.
Death was likely instantaneous. Poirot's moustache twitched. And the clock in the study stopped at 10:12. Does this align with your findings? Everett frowned. It's possible, but early in the window, the clock could have been stopped deliberately to mislead. Précisément, Poirot said, his eyes gleaming. You are a man of science, Doctor. Tell me, did you notice anything unusual about Sir Reginald's body? A mark, a bruise, perhaps a trace of something other than the dagger? Everett hesitated, then nodded. There was a small puncture mark on his left forearm, barely noticeable. I assumed it was unrelated, a scratch perhaps, but it could indicate an injection. An injection? Hastings exclaimed. Poison, Poirot? Perhaps, Poirot said, his tone measured. Doctor, you carry a medical kit, oui? With syringes? Of course, Everett said, stiffening. But I assure you I had no reason to harm Sir Reginald. My kit is in my cabin. You may inspect it. Merci, Poirot said. We shall. The search of Everett's medical kit revealed several syringes, all clean, but Poirot noted a vial of digitalis, a heart medication partially used. For Sir Reginald's condition? He asked. Yes, Everett said. I administered it occasionally, at his request, but not this morning. Poirot thanked him and returned to the saloon, his mind racing. Digitalis, Hastings. In excess, it is a poison, stopping the heart. The puncture mark, the heart condition, it suggests a possibility. But the dagger, it is theatrical, a statement. Why both? Next, Poirot summoned Clara Langley alone, hoping to probe her unease about Sir Reginald without her mother's protective presence. Clara entered, her hands clasped tightly, her eyes darting to the deck plan on the table. "Mademoiselle," Poirot said gently, "you spoke of Sir Reginald's attentions. Were they ever threatening?" Clara's lips trembled. "Not threatening exactly, but persistent. He'd find ways to be alone with me, offering to show me the yacht's bridge, inviting me to his study to see his art collection. I always refused, but he was insistent. And did anyone witness these interactions?" Poirot asked. "Mother did, once," Clara said. "And Mr. Fairchild. He was there when Sir Reginald asked me to join him for a private tour. Mr. Fairchild looked upset." "Upset, you say?" Poirot's eyes narrowed. "In what way?" Clara hesitated. "He was nervous, as always, but his face went pale. He left quickly." Poirot made a note, then held up the torn letter fragment. "This V, mademoiselle, does it mean anything to you?" Clara shook her head, but her fingers tightened. "No."
One she guards closely. The investigation took a new turn when Captain Whitaker reported a discovery. A crew member had found a small vial, empty but smelling faintly of chemicals, in a lifeboat near the lower deck. Poirot examined it, his nose wrinkling. "A trace of digitalis, perhaps? We must have it analyzed when we reach Dover. But its location, it is significant. The lifeboat is near the porthole by the study." Hastings frowned. "So the murderer could have tossed it out after, what, injecting Sir Reginald?" "Oui, but the dagger complicates matters," Poirot said. "A poison is subtle, a dagger bold. Why use both, unless to confuse? Or perhaps two hands were at work." The thought sent a chill through Hastings. "Two murderers, Poirot?" "It is possible," Poirot said, "but we must not leap to conclusions. Let us revisit the study." In the study, Poirot's attention returned to the desk. He examined the half-finished letter Sir Reginald had been writing, its contents mundane, a business deal with a shipping company. But beneath it, partially obscured by the blotter, was a small folded note. Poirot unfolded it carefully, revealing a single line in a woman's hand. "Tonight we must speak. E. E," Poirot murmured. "Lady Eleanor, perhaps, or another." Hastings peered over his shoulder. "It's not the same handwriting as the V letters." "No, it is not," Poirot said. "The plot thickens, Hastings. We have V, we have E, and we have a murder with two weapons. The little grey cells, they are dancing." As evening fell, Poirot gathered the guests in the saloon for a brief announcement. "Mesdames et messieurs," he said, his voice commanding silence, "the investigation progresses. I ask that you remain vigilant and report anything unusual. The truth, it is close, but it hides behind many veils." The guests dispersed, their faces a mix of fear and defiance. Lady Eleanor lingered, her eyes meeting Poirot's briefly before she turned away. Victor Crane muttered something under his breath, and Julian Fairchild nearly dropped his glass, his hands shaking. "Poirot," Hastings whispered as they returned to the saloon. "You're stirring them up. Is that wise?" "It is necessary, mon ami," Poirot said. "The murderer, they are among us, watching, listening. By applying pressure, we force a mistake. And when they err, Hercule Poirot will be waiting." As the yacht sailed into the night, the clues seemed to multiply, each one a thread in a tapestry of deception. The stopped clock, the torn letter, the vial, the cufflink, the earring, all pointed to a truth that remained just out of reach. But Poirot's mind was a beacon, cutting through the fog, and Hastings knew that the little Belgian would not rest until the killer was unmasked. Chapter 7. The waves, as night enveloped the vessel. The air aboard was thick with unspoken accusations, each guest retreating into their own world of fear and secrecy. Hercule Poirot, undeterred by the mounting tension, sat in the grand saloon, his notes meticulously arranged before him like pieces on a chessboard. Captain Hastings, pacing restlessly, felt the weight of the investigation pressing harder with each passing hour. The clues, the pearl earring, the cufflink, the stopped clock, the torn letter fragment, the vial, and now the mysterious note signed E, formed a puzzle that seemed to defy resolution. "Poirot," Hastings said, pausing by the table, "we're drowning in clues, yet the truth feels further away than ever. The V letters, the E note, the digitalis vial, it's as if everyone aboard has something to hide." Poirot's green eyes gleamed with quiet intensity. "Mon ami, it is precisely in this abundance of secrets that the truth hides. The lies, they are like threads in a tapestry. Pull one, and the pattern begins to unravel. We must find the right thread, Hastings, and tug gently." The morning had brought a new urgency to the investigation. With Dover only a day away, Poirot knew the authorities would soon take over, but he was determined to unmask the murderer before then. He began the day by summoning Lady Eleanor Harrowby for a second interview, hoping to probe the significance of the note signed E. Lady Eleanor entered the saloon with her usual grace, but her eyes were shadowed, her hands clasped tightly before her. "Mr. Poirot," she said, her voice steady but strained, "I hope you have progress to report. This nightmare is unbearable." "Madame," Poirot said, rising courteously, "progress is made, but the truth requires your assistance. This note," he held up the folded paper found beneath the blotter. "It is in your hand, no? Tonight we must speak. E, what did you wish to discuss with your husband?" Lady Eleanor's composure faltered, her lips parting in surprise. Yes, it's mine," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I slipped it under his study door last night. I wanted to talk about our marriage. Things had been strained between us." "Strained, madame?" Poirot's tone was gentle but insistent. "In what way?" She hesitated, her eyes darting to Hastings, then back to Poirot. "Reginald was a difficult man. His business consumed him, and he had interests elsewhere. I wanted to confront him, to understand where we stood." "And did you speak?" Poirot asked. "No," she said, shaking her head. "He was busy all evening, and then this morning, he was gone." Poirot nodded, his expression unreadable. "Merci, madame. One final question. This earring." He held up the pearl. "Earrings are different. I showed you." "Indeed," Poirot said, dismissing her with a polite bow. As she left, he turned to Hastings. "She admits to the note, but her fear, it is not only for her husband's death. There is something she conceals, perhaps to protect herself." Next, Poirot summoned Victor Crane, whose sardonic demeanor had given way to a wary edge. The playwright slumped into a chair, eyeing the cufflink on the table with thinly veiled unease. "Monsieur Crane," Poirot began, "you claim to have lost this cufflink days ago, yet it was found near Sir Reginald's body. And this note," he held up the crumpled paper requesting a meeting at 10. "You say you ignored it, yet Sir Reginald's letter opener was used to kill him. Tell me, what was your true relationship with him?" Crane's jaw tightened. "I told you. He was interested in my play. He wanted to fund it. But there were strings attached. Control over the script, casting, everything. I refused. That's all." "And the letters, signed V?" Poirot asked, producing one from the bundle found in Sir Reginald's drawer. "They speak of love, of secrecy. Are they yours?" Crane's face flushed. "No, I don't know who wrote them. I'm not the only V aboard, you know." "Indeed," Poirot said, his tone deceptively mild. "But you are the only one whose cufflink was found at the scene. A coincidence, perhaps?" Crane stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "I'm no murderer, Poirot. You're barking up the wrong tree."
As he stormed out, Poirot turned to Hastings. He is defensive, but not guilty. Not yet. The cufflink, it is too convenient, as you said. We must look elsewhere. The investigation took a new turn when Captain Whitaker reported a discovery from the crew. A small, locked diary found in a storage locker near the lower deck. The locker was accessible to both guests and crew, but the diary's leather cover bore the initials C.L. Clara Langley. Poirot opened it with a delicate tool, revealing entries written in a hurried, feminine hand. Most were mundane, sketches of the sea, notes on books, but one entry dated the previous day caught his eye. He grows bolder, and I cannot bear it. Mother says to avoid him, but how can I when he is everywhere? Jay saw us today, and his eyes were so strange. I fear what may come. Jay, Poirot murmured. Julian Fairchild, perhaps. And he, Sir Reginald? This diary, Hastings. It confirmed—
Hercule Poirot, he said sharply. The diary places you at a moment of tension between Miss Langley and Sir Reginald. Speak, or the truth would be more painful to extract. Fairchild crumpled, his voice barely audible. I saw them in the saloon 2 days ago. Sir Reginald was too close to her, holding her arm. She looked frightened. I told him to leave her alone, and he laughed at me. Said I was a fool to care. And you cared for Miss Langley? Poirot asked. Fairchild's face reddened. She's kind, gentle. I didn't like seeing her distressed. But I didn't kill him, Mr. Poirot. I swear it. Poirot dismissed him, then sat back, his fingers steepled. A motive, Hastings. Jealousy, perhaps, or a desire to protect. Fairchild's blood-stained handkerchief, his nervousness, it points to him, yet the cufflink and earring do not. The puzzle, it grows complex. As the day drew to a close, Poirot returned to the study, his attention fixed on the porthole. He opened it, leaning out to examine the exterior. The vial. It was found in the lifeboat below, he said. A murderer could have dropped it through here, but why not the dagger? No. The dagger was meant to be seen. Hastings frowned. To make it look like a crime of passion, perhaps? The digitalis suggests planning, but the dagger feels impulsive. Oui, Poirot said. A contradiction in method, which suggests a contradiction in motive. We must consider the possibility of 2 hands, one to poison, one to stab, or one mind, playing a double game. As night fell, Poirot gathered his notes, his mind racing. The lies were unraveling, but the truth remained elusive. The sapphire yacht sailed on, its secrets locked tight, but Poirot's little grey cells were relentless, piecing together the fragments of a deadly drama. Chapter 8. The Emotional Turning Point. The sapphire yacht glided through the inky waters of the English Channel, its lights flickering like stars against the vast darkness of the sea. The atmosphere aboard had grown suffocating, each guest ensnared in a web of suspicion that tightened with every passing hour. Hercule Poirot, seated in the grand saloon, remained a beacon of calm, his meticulous notes and the ever-present deck plan spread before him. Captain Hastings, however, felt the strain acutely, his nerves frayed by the relentless accumulation of clues, the pearl earring, the cufflink, the stopped clock, the torn letter, the vial, the note wanted to confuse us. Poirot's green eyes gleamed with quiet intensity. Mon ami, confusion is the murderer's ally, but not ours. The clues, they are like notes in a symphony, discordant at first, but with order, they form a melody. We approach a turning point, Hastings. The heart of this crime is not only in the act, but in the emotions that drove it. Today we shall crack the shell of one of these secrets. The morning began with a summons for Clara Langley, whose fragile demeanor had taken on a new edge of resolve. She entered the saloon alone, her hands clasped tightly, her eyes meeting Poirot's with a mixture of fear and determination. Poirot rose, offering her a seat with his customary courtesy. "Mademoiselle," he said gently, "your diary has revealed much. You wrote of Sir Reginald's troubling behavior and of Monsieur Fairchild's reaction. But there is more, I think, that you have not shared. The time has come for the truth. What did you fear from Sir Reginald?" Clara's lips trembled, and for a moment it seemed she would retreat into silence. But then, as if a dam had broken, her words spilled forth.
He wanted more than I could give,
She said, her voice breaking.
He said he could secure my inheritance, make sure the shipping company stayed in my control, but only if I agreed to be his. I refused, Mr. Poirot, but he wouldn't stop. He cornered me in the saloon 2 nights ago, and Julian, Mr. Fairchild, saw it. He told Sir Reginald to leave me alone, and they argued. I was so afraid.
Poirot's expression softened, but his questions were precise. "This argument, mademoiselle, what was said?"
Julian said Sir Reginald was a bully, that he'd ruin him if he didn't stop.
Clara said, tears welling in her eyes.
Sir Reginald laughed, called him a pathetic clerk. I thought Julian might do something rash, but he just walked away.
"And you told no one else?" Poirot asked. "Not your mother?" Clara shook her head.
Mother would have caused a scene. I didn't want that. I just wanted it to stop.
Poirot leaned forward, his voice low. "Mademoiselle, did you see Sir Reginald the morning he died? Or anyone near his study?" Clara's hands twisted in her lap.
No, but I saw Mr. Crane on the lower deck, near the staircase, around 10:30. He looked angry.
Poirot's moustache twitched. "Merci, mademoiselle. You have been most helpful. Rest now, but speak of this to no one." As Clara left, her shoulders slumped with relief. Poirot turned to Hastings. "The shell cracks, Hastings. Miss Langley's fear, it is genuine, and Fairchild's protectiveness, it is a motive. But Crane on the lower deck, this contradicts his alibi. We must confront him." "Victor Crane,
Langley saw you near the lower deck staircase. Explain this discrepancy." Crane's smirk faltered. "She's mistaken," he said, his voice sharp. "I was in my cabin. Maybe she saw someone else." Poirot's gaze was unrelenting. "And the note from Sir Reginald, requesting a meeting at 10? You claim you ignored it, yet you were seen where he was murdered. And this cufflink," he held up the engraved VC. "It is yours, no?" "I told you, I lost it days ago," Crane snapped, rising from his chair. "You're trying to frame me, Poirot. I didn't kill him." "Sit, monsieur," Poirot said, his voice like steel. "The truth, it will come, whether you speak it or not. What was your true quarrel with Sir Reginald?" Crane hesitated, then slumped back into his chair. "Fine," he said, his voice low. "He was blackmailing me. He knew about an affair I had years ago, one that could ruin my reputation. He wanted my play, my work, for next to nothing. I told him to go to hell, but I didn't kill him." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "And this affair, was it with the V of the letters found in his drawer?" Crane's face paled. "No, that wasn't me. I don't know who V is." As Crane left, Poirot sat back, his fingers steepled. Blackmail, Hastings. A powerful motive. Crane's lie about his whereabouts, it places him at the scene. But the letters, they do not fit. We must look to the women. The investigation took a dramatic turn when Captain Whitaker reported a new discovery. A crew member, cleaning the lifeboat where the vial was found, had uncovered a torn silk scarf, its edge stained with blood. The scarf was monogrammed with the initial D. "Diana Trent," Hastings said, his eyes widening. "She said she was on the aft deck, but now we have her scarf near the lifeboat with blood on it." "Oui," Poirot said, examining the scarf. "But the blood, it is dry, and the tear suggests struggle. We must question her." Diana Trent entered the saloon with her usual theatrical flourish, but her bravado crumbled when Poirot presented the scarf. "Mademoiselle," he said, "this was found near the lifeboat, with blood. It bears your initial. Explain." Diana's hands fluttered to her throat. I lost that scarf yesterday," she stammered. "I don't know how it got there. I swear I wasn't near the lower deck." "And yet," Poirot said, "your alibi is unconfirmed, and now your scarf is found with blood. Were you close to Sir Reginald, mademoiselle?"
Perhaps closer than you admitted. Diana's eyes filled with tears, and she collapsed into a chair, her voice breaking. All right, I'll tell you, she said. Reginald and I, we were lovers years ago. He promised to fund my comeback, but he changed. He became cruel, demanding. I ended it last month, but he wouldn't let go. He threatened to tell everyone, to ruin me. And the night before his death?
Poirot asked. Did you slip a note under his door signed E?
No, Diana said, her voice rising. That wasn't me. I didn't write any notes. Poirot dismissed her, his expression grim. She breaks Hastings, but not fully. The scarf, the affair, it points to her, yet the E note does not. The truth is close, but it hides behind another veil. As the yacht sailed toward Dover, the emotional weight of the confessions pressed heavily on the investigation. Clara's fear, Crane's blackmail, Diana's affair. Each revelation was a crack in the facade. But the murderer remained elusive. Poirot's little grey cells worked tirelessly, weaving the threads of motive and opportunity into a pattern only he could see. Chapter 9. The trap is set. The sapphire yacht sailed through the twilight, its silhouette a dark jewel against the fading light of the English Channel. The air aboard was heavy with dread, the guests' nerves frayed to breaking by the relentless pressure of Hercule Poirot's investigation. The Grand Saloon, once a stage for polite conversation and clinking glasses, now felt like a courtroom, where every word was weighed and every glance scrutinized. Captain Hastings, seated near Poirot, felt the tension coiling tighter, as if the yacht itself were holding its breath, awaiting the next revelation. The clues, the pearl earring, the cufflink, the stopped clock, the torn letter, the digitalis vial, the note signed E. Clara's diary and now Diana Trent's bloodstained scarf formed a labyrinth of deceit, and Poirot was poised to navigate its final turns. Mon ami, Poirot said, his voice low but resolute, we approach the moment of truth. The murderer, they believe themselves clever, hiding behind their red herrings and half-truths. But Hercule Poirot, he sets a trap, and the guilty, they will stumble. Hastings frowned, glancing at the deck plan and Poirot's meticulous notes. A trap, Poirot. You mean to gather them all, like in one of your dramatic reveals? Poirot's mustache twitched with a faint smile. Not yet, Hastings. The grand denouement. It must wait until all pieces are in place. But tonight, we apply pressure. We stir the waters, and we watch who flinches. The emotional cracks we saw yesterday, Miss Langley's fear, Monsieur Crane's anger, Mademoiselle Trent's confession, they are the chinks in the armor. Now, we strike. Poirot's plan was to gather the guests for dinner in the saloon, under the pretense of updating them on the investigation. He instructed Captain Whitaker to ensure the dining table was set as it had been the first night, with every detail, cutlery, crystal, even the menu, replicated precisely. The seeing, it must evoke memory, Poirot explained to Hastings.
Limit. Lady Eleanor sat at the head of the table, her face a mask of composure, though her fingers toyed nervously with her napkin. Clara Langley, pale but resolute, sat beside her mother, whose stern gaze swept the room. Dr. Malcolm Everett adjusted his spectacles, his expression unreadable, while Victor Crane slouched in his chair, his sardonic smirk barely masking his unease. Diana Trent, her theatrical poise strained, clutched a glass of wine, and Julian Fairchild fidgeted, his eyes darting to the door, as if longing to flee. Poirot stood, his small figure commanding the room. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, his voice clear and deliberate, "I thank you for joining me. The investigation into Sir Reginald Harrowby's murder progresses, and tonight I share with you certain truths. But first, let us dine, as we did on that fateful first evening, when all seemed well." The steward served the meal, roast pheasant, cream potatoes, and the same lemon soufflé, while Poirot observed the guests, his green eyes missing nothing. The clink of cutlery and the murmur of forced conversation filled the air, but the tension was palpable. Hastings, seated beside Poirot, noted how Clara avoided looking at Fairchild, how Crane's hand trembled as he poured wine, and how Diana's laugh rang hollow. After the main course, Poirot rose again, holding up the pearl earring. "This," he said, "was found near Sir Reginald's body. It belongs to someone here. I ask now, who claims it?" A hush fell over the table. Lady Eleanor's hand went to her ear, then dropped. "I told you, Mr. Poirot, it's not mine," she said, her voice steady but her eyes flickering. Diana Trent shook her head. "Nor mine. I prefer diamonds." Clara and her mother exchanged a glance, but neither spoke. Poirot nodded as if expecting this. "Very well. Let us consider another clue." He produced the cufflink, its VC initials glinting in the chandelier light. "Monsieur Crane, you say you lost this days ago, yet it was found in the corridor near the blood." Crane's jaw tightened. "I've said all I'm going to say about that. Someone planted it." "Perhaps," Poirot said, his tone deceptively mild. "But there is more. A note signed E, found in Sir Reginald's study, speaks of a need to talk. Lady Eleanor, you admitted to this note, yet you did not meet him. Why?" Lady Eleanor's composure wavered. "I told you he was busy. I changed my mind." Poirot's gaze shifted to Diana Trent. "And you, mademoiselle, confessed to an affair with Sir Reginald ended last month. Yet your scarf, stained with blood, was found near the lifeboat where a vial of digitalis was discovered. Explain." Diana's glass slipped from her hand, shattering on the floor.
Fairchild's face went white. Dr. Everett cleared his throat. "Mr. Poirot, this is becoming a spectacle. Are you accusing us all?" "Not all, Doctor," Poirot said, his voice cutting through the chaos. "But one among you is guilty. And there is more. A diary belonging to Mademoiselle Langley speaks of fear, of Sir Reginald's unwanted attentions, and of Monsieur Fairchild's anger. Monsieur Fairchild, you confronted Sir Reginald. Did you act further?" Fairchild stood, his chair scraping back. "No! I told him to leave Clara alone, but I didn't kill him, I swear it!" Clara's eyes filled with tears and she rose, her voice trembling. "Stop it, Mr. Poirot! Julian didn't do it! He was protecting me, that's all! Sir Reginald was a monster. He threatened to ruin my family if I didn't give in to him." The room fell silent, the weight of her words settling over the guests. Mrs. Langley's face was a mask of fury, and Lady Eleanor's hands clenched into fists. Poirot's eyes gleamed with satisfaction. "Merci, mademoiselle," he said softly. "Your courage illuminates much. Sir Reginald, he was a man who used power to bend others to his will. But who among you bent too far?" As the guests dispersed, their faces a mix of shock and fear, Poirot turned to Hastings. "The trap, it has sprung, mon ami. Clara's outburst, it confirms the motive, Sir Reginald's coercion. But the method, it remains unclear. The digitalis, the dagger, they suggest a plan, yet also passion. We must examine the vial again." They returned to the lower deck, where the vial had been found in the lifeboat. Poirot examined it closely, noting a faint residue inside. "Digitalis, perhaps," he said, "but the quantity, it is small, enough to weaken, not to kill outright. The dagger, it was the final act." Hastings frowned. "So the poison was a distraction?" "Or a failsafe," Poirot said. "The murderer, they ensured death by two means, in case one failed. But why? Fear of discovery, or fear of failure?" As they returned to the saloon, Captain Whittaker approached, his face grim. "Mr. Poirot, one of the crew found something else in the lifeboat. A man's handkerchief, monogrammed J.F. "Julian Fairchild," Hastings said, his eyes widening. "Oui," Poirot said, taking the handkerchief. "Another clue, too neatly placed. The trap. It reveals not only the guilty, but those who wish to obscure the truth. Tomorrow, Hastings, we shall pull the final thread." The sapphire yacht sailed on, its secrets teetering on the edge of exposure, and Poirot's little table his small figure radiating authority as the guests assembled, their faces etched with apprehension. Captain Hastings, seated to his right, felt his pulse quicken, sensing that Poirot's meticulous investigation was about to culminate in the unmasking of Sir Reginald Harrowby's murderer. The clues, the pearl earring, the cufflink, the stopped clock, the torn letter, the digitalis vial, the note signed E, Clara's diary, Diana's scarf, and now Julian Fairchild's handkerchief had woven a complex tapestry, and Poirot was ready to reveal its pattern. "Mesdames et messieurs," Poirot began, his voice clear and commanding, "we have reached the moment of truth. Sir Reginald Harrowby was murdered in a locked study, stabbed with his own letter opener, and possibly poisoned with digitalis. The clues, they are many, but they point to one truth. Tonight, Hercule Poirot will reveal the murderer among you." The guests stirred, their eyes darting to one another. Lady Eleanor's hands tightened on her napkin. Clara Langley clung to her mother's arm. Victor Crane's smirk was absent. Diana Trent's theatrical poise faltered. Dr. Malcolm Everett adjusted his spectacles, and Julian Fairchild's face was ashen. Captain Whittaker stood by the door, ensuring no one could leave. "Let us begin with the crime," Poirot said, pacing slowly. "Sir Reginald was found at noon, dead in the corridor outside his locked study, a dagger in his heart. Dr. Everett estimated death between 10:30 and 11, yet the clock in the study was stopped at 10:12. Why? To mislead us about the time of death. The puncture mark on his arm, it suggests digitalis, a poison that could weaken his heart, but the dagger ensured his end. This duality, poison and blade, speaks of a careful plan, yet also of passion." Poirot held up the pearl earring. "This, found near the body, pointed to a woman, but none of you claim it. Its rose motif is unique, yet Lady Eleanor's earrings, though similar, do not match. A red herring, perhaps, but placed deliberately." Next, he produced the cufflink. The initials VC suggest Monsieur Crane, who claims he lost it days ago. Yet it was found in the corridor, too conveniently. And this note. He held up the crumpled paper, requesting a meeting at 10. "Monsieur Crane, you denied attending, yet Miss Langley saw you near the lower deck at 10:30. Crane bristled. "I told you I wasn't there. She's mistaken." Poirot raised a hand. "Patience, monsieur. We shall return to you." He turned to the torn letter fragment, signed V. "These letters, found in Sir Reginald's drawer, speak of love and secrecy. They are not in Monsieur Crane."
"I change my mind." Poirot nodded, then produced Diana's scarf.
"Mademoiselle Trent, your scarf, stained with blood, was found near the lifeboat where a vial of digitalis was discovered. You confessed to an affair with Sir Reginald, ended bitterly. Did your anger drive you to murder?" Diana's eyes widened. "No, I lost that scarf. I wasn't near the study." Poirot's gaze shifted to Clara. "Mademoiselle Langley, your diary revealed Sir Reginald's unwanted advances and Monsieur Fairchild's anger. He confronted Sir Reginald, oui? And this handkerchief." He held up the monogrammed JF. "It was found in the lifeboat with the vial and scarf." Fairchild stood, trembling. "I didn't do it. I protected Clara, but I didn't kill him." "Sit, monsieur," Poirot said, his voice like steel. "The truth, it is near. Let us reconstruct the crime. Sir Reginald was in his study, writing, when the murderer entered. The door was locked, yet the key was with Monsieur Fairchild. The porthole was too small for escape. How, then, did the murderer strike?" Poirot paused, his eyes sweeping the room. "The answer lies in the clock. It was stopped at 10:12, not by accident, but to suggest an earlier death. Dr. Everett's examination places death closer to 11. The digitalis, it was administered first, weakening Sir Reginald. The dagger was the final act, in the corridor, not the study. But how? He turned to Dr. Everett. Doctor, your notebook recorded Sir Reginald's heart condition. You had access to digitalis. Did you weaken him? Perhaps to protect another? Everett's face remained impassive. I had no reason to harm him. My digitalis was for his treatment. Poirot nodded, then faced the group. The murderer is among you, and the motive is clear. Sir Reginald used his power to coerce, to blackmail, to control. Clara feared his advances, Diana his threats, Crane his demands, Lady Eleanor his betrayal. But one of you acted. He paused, his voice dropping. The murderer is Mrs. Beatrice Langley. A gasp rippled through the room. Clara cried out, No! Mother, tell him it's not true! Mrs. Langley's face was a mask of stone, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of fear. Poirot continued, relentless. Madame, you claimed to be napping, yet your sleeping draught was untouched. Your daughter's diary revealed your fury at Sir Reginald's pursuit of Clara. You saw him as a threat to her future, her honor. You had access to Dr. Everett's medical kit. You visited
your cabin, overlooked in our search. You dropped it in haste, fleeing the scene, the vial in the lifeboat, the torn letter. You wrote those letters, signed V, for your maiden name, Victoria, during an earlier affair with Sir Reginald, which he used to blackmail you. You tore the letter to hide your past, but the fragment remained. Clara sobbed, and Mrs. Langley's composure cracked. He was a monster, she whispered. He would have ruined Clara, taken everything. I had to protect her. Poirot's expression softened, but his voice was firm. Madame, the law will judge you, but the truth is revealed. The cufflink, the scarf, the handkerchief, they were distractions, placed by you to confuse. But the little grey cells, they see through the fog. As Captain Whitaker moved to restrain Mrs. Langley, the saloon erupted in chaos. Clara's cries, Diana's gasps, Crane's stunned silence. Poirot stepped back, his work done, his eyes reflecting a quiet sorrow. Hastings, shaken, whispered, How did you know, Poirot? The details, mon ami, Poirot said. The earrings motif, the untouched sleeping draught, the handwriting, it all pointed to her. The heart of a mother, it is fierce, but it led her to murder. The sapphire yacht sailed on, its secrets laid bare, and Poirot's genius had once again unraveled the impossible. Chapter 11. The Reflection. The sapphire yacht sailed steadily toward Dover, its polished decks bathed in the pale light of dawn. The tumult of the previous evening's revelation had subsided into a heavy silence, as if the vessel itself mourned the unraveling of its secrets. The grand saloon, where Hercule Poirot had unmasked Mrs. Beatrice Langley as Sir Reginald Harrowby's murderer, now stood empty, its chandeliers dimmed, its mahogany table cleared of the clues that had once littered it. Captain Hastings sat on the aft deck, gazing at the horizon, his mind replaying the dramatic confrontation. Poirot, ever immaculate in his cream-colored suit, joined him, his small hands clasped behind his back, his mustache perfectly waxed despite the early hour. Mon ami, Poirot said, settling into a deck chair beside Hastings. You are pensive. The case, it is solved, yet you are troubled. Why? Hastings sighed, his eyes fixed on the distant coastline. It's the tragedy of it all, Poirot. Mrs. Langley, she did it for Clara, to protect her. I can't help but feel sorry for her, even if she's a murderer. And Clara, how will she live with this? Poirot nodded, his green eyes softening. The human heart, Hastings, it is a complex thing. It drives us to great love and great folly. Madame Langley's crime was born of a mother's fierce devotion, but it was a crime nonetheless.
Whitaker's orders awaited the authorities' arrival in Dover. Mrs. Langley had been placed in a secure cabin, her confession a heavy weight that had silenced even the most voluble among them. Clara, devastated, had refused to see anyone, while Lady Eleanor, Victor Crane, Diana Trent, Dr. Everett, and Julian Fairchild grappled with their own roles in the tangled web of motives and secrets. Hastings turned to Poirot, his brow furrowed. "How did you piece it all together, Poirot? The earring, the digitalis, the letters, it was so convoluted. I thought Fairchild or Crane was the culprit until the very end." Poirot's mustache twitched with a faint smile. "The little grey cells, mon ami, they work in harmony, like a symphony. Let us reflect on the method. The crime, it was clever, but not flawless. Madame Langley wished to protect her daughter from Sir Reginald's coercion, but her plan was layered, like the tides of the sea." He leaned back, his fingers steepled. "Consider the clues. The pearl earring with the rose motif. It was hers from a necklace she wore rarely, overlooked in our search. She dropped it in haste, fleeing the corridor after the murder. The digitalis, taken from Dr. Everett's kit, was administered to weaken Sir Reginald, ensuring he could not resist. The dagger, taken from his desk, was a final act of rage, a statement of her defiance. The stopped clock at 10:12, it was her attempt to mislead us, to suggest an earlier death, though Dr. Everett's examination placed it closer to 11. Hastings nodded, his mind tracing the threads. "And the letters signed V? They were hers too?" "Oui," Poirot said, "from her maiden name, Victoria. Years ago she had an affair with Sir Reginald, a secret he used to blackmail her. The torn letter fragment, signed V, was her attempt to destroy evidence, but she was careless. The note signed E, written by Lady Eleanor, was a distraction, a coincidence that muddied the waters. The cufflink, the scarf, the handkerchief, these were red herrings placed by Madame Langley to cast suspicion on Crane, Trent, and Fairchild." "But why so many distractions?" Hastings asked. "To confuse," Poirot said. "She knew a simple crime would point to her. Her motive was too clear, so she scattered clues, hoping to overwhelm. But the little grey cells, they see through the chaos. The untouched sleeping draught in her cabin betrayed her alibi. She was not napping. Her fury at Sir Reginald's pursuit of Clara, recorded in Clara's diary, revealed her heart. And the earring, it was the final link tying her to the scene." Hastings shook his head, marveling. "You saw it all, Poirot. But what about Fairchild? His handkerchief, his protectiveness over Clara. I was sure he was involved." "A natural assumption," Poirot said. "Monsieur Fairchild's love for Clara made him a suspect, but his actions were the murderer. The handkerchief in the lifeboat. It was another of Madame Langley's plants, taken from his cabin to confuse us. As for Crane, his blackmail gave him motive, but his lies were about shame, not murder. Mademoiselle Trent's affair, Lady Eleanor's strained marriage, they were threads in the tapestry, but not the pattern. The yacht's horn sounded, signaling their approach to Dover. Hastings glanced at Poirot, noting the quiet satisfaction in his friend's eyes. "You take no pleasure in this, do you?" he asked. Poirot's expression grew somber. "The truth, it is my purpose, Hastings, but it is not always a joy. Madame Langley acted from love, but she chose a path of destruction. The law will judge her, and Clara will bear the scar. Yet order, it is restored. That is the work of Hercule Poirot." As the yacht neared the harbor, Captain Whittaker approached, his face grim but respectful. "Mr. Poirot, the authorities are waiting. They'll take Mrs. Langley into custody. I don't know how you did it, but you saved us from a nightmare." "Merci, Capitaine," Poirot said, rising. "But the nightmare, it lingers for some. Ensure Mademoiselle Clara is cared for. She will need strength." Whittaker nodded and left to prepare for docking. Poirot turned to Hastings, a faint smile returning. "Come, mon ami, the sea. It has given us its secrets. Let us return to the land, where simpler mysteries await." Hastings followed, his heart heavy, but his admiration for Poirot unwavering.
The sapphire yacht had been a floating prison of lies, but Poirot's genius had unlocked its darkest truth. As the shore came into view, Hastings felt a quiet relief, knowing that with Poirot's little grey cells at work, no secret could remain hidden forever. Chapter 12. The Shadows of Truth. The sapphire yacht lay anchored in Dover's harbour, its gleaming hull a stark contrast to the sombre proceedings unfolding aboard. The morning sun cast a pale light over the decks, where police officers from the local constabulary had boarded to take Mrs. Beatrice Langley into custody. The guests, confined to their cabins, awaited their final interviews with the authorities, their faces etched with a mixture of relief and lingering dread. Hercule Poirot, standing at the rail of the aft deck, gazed out at the bustling port, his expression one of quiet contemplation. Captain Hastings, ever at his side, felt the weight of the case's resolution, yet a nagging unease persisted, as if some shadow still clung to the truth. "Poirot," Hastings said, his voice low, "it's over, isn't it? Mrs. Langley confessed."
Case, it is solved. But the heart, it lingers on the human cost. The truth, it is like the sea. Its surface may be calm, but currents run deep. Let us walk, Hastings, and reflect on what remains. They strolled along the deck, the cries of gulls overhead mingling with the clatter of the port. Poirot's hands were clasped behind his back, his steps measured, as if each movement were part of a larger calculation. "Madame Langley's confession," he said. "It was complete, yet it protects others. She admitted to the digitalis, the dagger, the earring, the planted clues, but the emotional threads, Clara's fear, Fairchild's devotion, Lady Eleanor's betrayal, they weave a story beyond the crime." Hastings frowned. "You think she's shielding someone? Clara, perhaps?" "No," Poirot said, shaking his head. "Clara, she is innocent, a victim of her mother's fierce love. But Madame Langley's actions, they were not solitary in their impact. Consider the others. Lady Eleanor, her marriage strained by Sir Reginald's infidelity, knew of his affairs but did not act. Mademoiselle Trent, her heart broken by his cruelty, hid her shame but did not kill. Monsieur Crane, blackmailed, had motive but lacked the resolve. And Monsieur Fairchild, his love for Clara drove him to confront Sir Reginald, but not to murder." They paused by the Grand Saloon, where the police were concluding their interviews. Through the window, Hastings glimpsed Clara, her face pale and tear-streaked, speaking softly to an officer. Julian Fairchild stood nearby, his expression one of quiet anguish, as if he bore the weight of Clara's pain. "Fairchild," Hastings said. "He's been so quiet since the reveal. Do you think he knew more than he let on?" Poirot's mustache twitched. He knew of Sir Reginald's pursuit of Clara, and his heart, it burned with anger. But the handkerchief, planted by Madame Langley, was meant to implicate him. She used his devotion to confuse us, knowing his protectiveness would make him a suspect. Yet his alibi, sorting correspondence in the library, was verified by the steward, who saw him there at 10:30. Hastings nodded, his mind turning to the other suspects. And Lady Eleanor? Her note, signed E, seemed so significant. But it was a coincidence? "Oui," Poirot said. "A distraction, but a revealing one. Her strained marriage gave her motive, yet her composure, her restraint, it showed she did not act. The note was a plea for reconciliation, not a prelude to murder. The true key was Madame Langley's past, her affair with Sir Reginald, the letters signed V for Victoria. She killed to protect Clara from the same fate." They entered the saloon.
"With you before you leave."
"Merci, Capitaine," Poirot said. "I shall see her."
Clara awaited them in a quiet corner of the saloon, her hands clasped tightly, her eyes red but resolute. "Mr. Poirot," she said, her voice trembling, I don't know how to thank you." You found the truth, but it's broken everything. Mother, she did it for me, but I wish she hadn't." Poirot's expression softened, and he took her hand gently. "Mademoiselle, the heart of a mother is a powerful force, but it led her to a dark path. You must not carry her guilt. Live well, for her sacrifice, however misguided, was for you." Clara nodded, tears spilling over. "And Julian, he tried to protect me. He's been so kind. But now, I don't know how to face him." "Give it time, mademoiselle," Poirot said. "The heart, it heals, though the scars remain." As Clara left, escorted by a steward, Hastings turned to Poirot. "You're kinder than you let on, Poirot. But what about the others? Will they recover from this?" Poirot's gaze drifted to the sea. "Lady Eleanor, she will mourn in her way, but her strength will carry her. Mademoiselle Trent, her pride will mend. Monsieur Crane, his ambition will drive him forward. Monsieur Fairchild, his love for Clara will endure, though it may remain unspoken. And Dr. Everett, his detachment, it shields him. The Sapphire Yacht, it has been a crucible, but life, it continues." The police signaled their departure, and Poirot and Hastings prepared to disembark. As they descended the gangway, the yacht seemed to shrink behind them, its opulence diminished by the tragedy it had borne. The Dover air was sharp, filled with the bustle of the port, and Hastings felt a weight lift, though questions lingered. "Poirot," he said, as they stepped onto the dock, "do you ever doubt yourself? What if you'd been wrong about Mrs. Langley?" Poirot's smile was faint but confident. "The little grey cells, mon ami, they do not doubt. They observe, they reason, they deduce. The truth, it is like a star. It may be obscured, but it is always there. Hercule Poirot merely clears the clouds." They walked toward the waiting car, the sea at their backs, and Hastings marveled once again at his friend's unyielding certainty. The Sapphire Yacht would sail again, its decks scrubbed clean of blood, but the shadows of its secrets would linger, a testament to the brilliance of Poirot's mind and the fragility of the human heart. Chapter 13. The Echoes of Motive. The Dover docks buzzed with activity as the Sapphire Yacht lay moored, its once proud silhouette now a somber London. The case was solved, the murderer unmasked, yet a quiet unease lingered in Hastings' heart, as if the full weight of the motives and secrets had not yet settled. "Poirot," Hastings said, turning to his friend, "Mrs. Langley's confession tied up the clues, but I can't help wondering about the others. They all had reasons to hate Sir Reginald, his blackmail, his cruelty. Did they know more than they admitted? Could someone else have been complicit?" Poirot's green eyes gleamed with a thoughtful light, his moustache twitching slightly. "Mon ami, you probe the shadows of the human soul, and there you find truth. The case, it is closed, but the motives, they echo beyond the crime. Each person aboard the Sapphire Yacht carried a burden, resentment, fear, shame. Let us reflect, Hastings, on these echoes, for they reveal the complexity of the heart." They boarded a waiting car, the driver tipping his cap as they settled in for the journey. Poirot gazed out at the receding yacht, his fingers steepled in his lap. "Madame Langley killed to protect her daughter, but the others, they too were touched by Sir Reginald's influence. Let us consider their roles, not as accomplices, but as players in a drama of their own making." Hastings nodded, his mind replaying the tangled web of relationships. Lady Eleanor, for instance, she knew about Sir Reginald's affairs. Did she suspect Mrs. Langley? "Oui," Poirot said.
Lady Eleanor, she is a woman of perception. Her note, signed E, was a plea to salvage her marriage, but she saw the currents of deceit around her husband. She did not act, but her silence, it protected her dignity. She knew of his pursuit of Clara, his blackmail of Crane, his past with Mademoiselle Trent, yet she chose restraint, perhaps because she saw Madame Langley's resolve. "And Diana Trent?" Hastings asked. "Her affair with Sir Reginald. It must have cut deep, especially when he threatened to expose her." "Mademoiselle Trent," Poirot said. "She is a performer, accustomed to masking pain. Her confession of the affair was truthful, but her scarf, stained with blood, it was a clever plant by Madame Langley, who knew of Diana's history with Sir Reginald. The scarf was meant to mislead, but Diana's tears, they were real. She did not kill, but her heart bore the scars of his betrayal." The car wound through the coastal roads, the sea a distant shimmer on their left. Hastings leaned back, his thoughts turning to Victor Crane. Crane's blackmail. That was a strong motive. He lied about his whereabouts, and that cufflink kept pointing was to conceal a different secret, perhaps a meeting with another aboard the yacht, unrelated to the murder. But he lacked the resolve to kill. "And Fairchild," Hastings said, his voice softening. "His love for Clara, it was so clear. I thought he might have acted to protect her." Poirot's expression grew somber. "Monsieur Fairchild, his heart is noble, but his courage is quiet. His confrontation with Sir Reginald was born of love, but the handkerchief in the lifeboat, like the cufflink and scarf, was Madame Langley's doing. She used his devotion to Clara to muddy the waters, knowing his protectiveness would make him a suspect. His alibi, verified by the steward, cleared him, but his silence since the reveal, it speaks of guilt for not doing more to shield Clara." Hastings frowned. "And Dr. Everett? He seemed so detached, yet the digitalis came from his kit." "The doctor," Poirot said. "He is a man of science, but not without feeling. His notebook recorded Sir Reginald's heart condition, and his digitalis was stolen by Madame Langley, who visited his cabin under a false pretense. He suspected nothing, but his detachment, it was his shield. He did not kill, but his tools were used in the crime." The car slowed as they approached a small inn where they would rest before continuing to London. Poirot stepped out, his movements precise, and Hastings followed, still grappling with the case's complexities. They settled at a quiet table in the inn's parlour, where Poirot ordered a tisane, his ritual of calm amidst chaos. "Hastings," Poirot said, sipping his drink, "the echoes of motive, they teach us much. Sir Reginald, he was a man who wielded power like a blade, cutting into the lives of those around him. His death, it was not just Madame Langley's act, but the culmination of many wounds. Each suspect, they carried a piece of the truth, but only she acted." Hastings leaned forward, his voice low. "Do you think Clara will forgive her mother?" Poirot's eyes softened. "Forgiveness, it is a journey, not a destination. Clara's love for her mother is deep, but the betrayal, it will linger. She will need time, and perhaps Monsieur Fairchild's quiet strength to find peace." As the evening deepened, Poirot set down his cup, his gaze distant. The Sapphire yacht, it was a stage, Hastings, where each played their part. The little grey cells, they saw the pattern, but the heart, it feels the cost. We have restored order, but the human soul, it remains a mystery. Hastings nodded, his admiration for Poirot's insight tempered by a lingering sadness. The case was closed, the murderer apprehended, but the echoes of motive, love, betrayal, fear would where Hercule Poirot and Captain Hastings had taken refuge was a quaint, ivy-clad building, its cosy interior a stark contrast to the opulent but now tainted Sapphire yacht.
The evening was quiet, the hum of the port replaced by the soft crackle of a fire in the parlour. Poirot sat by the hearth, his tisane steaming in a delicate cup, his green eyes reflecting the flickering flames. Hastings, seated across from him, nursed a glass of brandy, his thoughts still anchored to the yacht and the devastating truth of Mrs. Beatrice Langley's guilt. The case was solved, the murderer in custody, yet the silence that followed the revelation felt heavier than the storm of clues that had preceded it. "Poirot," Hastings said, swirling his glass. "The case is closed, and Mrs. Langley will face justice. But I can't help feeling we've left something unresolved. The others, Clara, Fairchild, Lady Eleanor, they're all carrying burdens they didn't ask for. Did we do enough to help them?" Poirot's moustache twitched, a faint smile softening his features. "Mon ami, you have a heart that seeks to mend. But Hercule Poirot, he is a seeker of truth, not a healer of souls. The crime, it is solved. The motives, they are laid bare. But the aftermath, it belongs to those who must live with it. Let us reflect, Hastings, on the silence that follows the storm, for it speaks as loudly as the crime itself. The parlour was warm, its walls adorned with faded paintings of ships at sea, a reminder of the journey they had just endured. Poirot sipped his tisane, his mind still sharp, as if the case's echoes were a puzzle, yet to be fully understood. "The silence," he continued. "It is not empty. It is filled with the unspoken, Clara's grief, Fairchild's unspoken love, Lady Eleanor's dignity, even Monsieur Crane's wounded pride. Each carries a piece of the tragedy, and in their silence they reveal their strength." Hastings leaned forward, his brow furrowed. "Clara especially, she's so young, Poirot. To lose her mother to prison, to know it was for her, it's unbearable." "Oui," Poirot said, his voice gentle. "Mademoiselle Clara, she is the heart of this tragedy. Her mother's love drove her to murder, but it also shielded Clara from Sir Reginald's predation. The diary, it revealed her fear, her vulnerability, but also her courage in speaking out. She will carry this wound, but she is not alone. Monsieur Fairchild, his devotion, it will be her anchor." Hastings nodded, recalling Fairchild's quiet anguish during the final confrontation. "He loves her, doesn't he? But he's so reserved, so English about it. Will he—" Courage to speak, and she, the strength to listen. The fire crackled, casting shadows across the room. Hastings thought of Lady Eleanor, whose composed exterior had hidden a marriage, fractured by betrayal. And Lady Eleanor, she seemed so strong, but losing Sir Reginald, even if he was a cad, must hurt. "Madame Harrowby," Poirot said, "she is a woman of resilience. Her note, signed E, was a final attempt to reclaim her marriage, but she knew its fragility. Sir Reginald's affairs with Madame Langley, with Mademoiselle Trent, were wounds she bore in silence. Yet she did not kill. Her dignity, it is her armor. She will rebuild, perhaps finding freedom in her widowhood." Hastings took a sip of brandy, his thoughts turning to the others. Victor Crane. He was so angry, so defensive. Do you think he'll ever admit the full truth about his blackmail? "No," Poirot said, shaking his head. "Monsieur Crane, he hides behind his wit, his pride. The blackmail, it was a chain around his ambition, but he did not break it with murder. The cufflink, planted by Madame Langley, was a cruel jest, but it revealed his fear of exposure. He will carry on, writing his plays, but the shadow of Sir Reginald's threat will linger." "And Diana Trent?" Hastings asked. "Her affair with Sir Reginald, it seemed to break her spirit." "Mademoiselle Trent," Poirot said. "She is a performer, accustomed to the stage of life. Her affair,
It was a moment of weakness, exploited by Sir Reginald's cruelty. The blood-stained scarf, another of Madame Langley's deceptions, cast suspicion on her, but her tears were genuine. She will return to her world of lights and applause, but with a heart more guarded. Hastings set down his glass, his mind drifting to Dr. Malcolm Everett. The doctor seemed so uninvolved, yet his digitalis was used. Did he suspect anything? Dr. Everett, Poirot said. He is a man of detachment, his emotions buried beneath science. His kit was exploited, but he was no accomplice. His notebook, with its cryptic entries, was merely a record of duty. He will continue his work, perhaps with greater caution, but untouched by the passion that drove this crime. The inn's clock chimed, marking the late hour. Poirot set down his empty cup, his expression one of quiet satisfaction. The silence, Hastings. It is where the truth settles. The Sapphire Yacht was a stage for human frailty. Love, betrayal, desperation.
Enveloped them, a stark contrast to the yacht's turmoil. The case of the Sapphire Yacht was closed, but its echoes, love, loss, and the silent strength of those left behind would resonate long after Poirot and Hastings returned to the rhythm of their lives. Chapter 15. The Final Departure. The Dover morning was crisp, the air laced with the salt of the sea, and the faint hum of activity from the bustling port. Hercule Poirot and Captain Hastings stood at the edge of the dock, their bags packed, ready to board the train back to London. The Sapphire Yacht loomed behind them, its polished exterior now a silent witness to the tragedy that had unfolded within its opulent confines. The police had completed their work, and Mrs. Beatrice Langley was en route to face trial, leaving a fractured group of passengers to navigate the aftermath of her crime. Hastings, his coat buttoned against the chill, cast a final glance at the yacht, his heart heavy with the echoes of the case. "Poirot," he said, turning to his friend, "it's strange to leave it behind. The yacht, the people, the secrets. We've solved the murder, but I can't help feeling we are leaving them to face the consequences alone. Clara especially. She's so young to carry such a burden." Poirot's green eyes, sharp as ever, softened with understanding. "Mon ami, you are ever the compassionate heart. The crime it is resolved, the truth laid bare by the little grey cells, but the lives touched by it, they must find their own paths now. Hercule Poirot, he brings order to chaos, but the healing, it is for others. Come, let us reflect one last time before we depart." They walked slowly toward the station, the clatter of porters and the whistle of a distant train filling the air. Poirot's steps were precise, his hands clasped behind his back, his cream-colored suit immaculate despite the journey. "The Sapphire Yacht," he said. "It was a microcosm of the human condition. Ambition, love, betrayal, all confined within its decks. Madame Langley's act, it was the spark that ignited the truth. But the flames, they touched all." Hastings nodded, his mind drifting to the passengers. "Clara, she'll never be the same, knowing her mother killed for her. Do you think she'll find peace?" "Mademoiselle Clara," Poirot said. "She is young, but resilient. Her mother's love, though it led to murder, was a shield. The diary, it revealed her fear, but also her strength in confronting it. Monsieur Fairchild, his quiet devotion, it will be her guide. In time she may forgive, though the scar will remain." They paused at a bench near the station, the sea still visible in the distance. Hastings thought of Julian Fairchild's beauty, his heart bound to Clara. The handkerchief planted by Madame Langley to implicate him was a cruel twist, but his alibi held firm. He will remain, I think, a silent protector, perhaps finding the courage to speak when the time is right. Love, it is patient. "And Lady Eleanor?" Hastings asked. "She lost a husband, flawed as he was. How does one recover from that?" "Madame Harrowby," Poirot said. "She is a woman of steel beneath her grace. Her note, signed E, was a plea for reconciliation,
But she knew Sir Reginald's betrayals, his affairs with Madame Langley and Mademoiselle Trent, his pursuit of Clara. She chose dignity over vengeance. In widowhood, she will find freedom, perhaps even peace. Hastings' thoughts turned to the others. Victor Crane, he was so defensive, so angry. Will he ever escape Sir Reginald's shadow? Monsieur Crane, Poirot said. He is a man of ambition, changed by his past. The blackmail, the cufflink planted by Madame Langley, these were blows to his pride, but not his spirit. He will write his plays, perhaps with a new edge of cynicism, but he will endure. And Diana Trent? Hastings asked. Her affair with Sir Reginald, it broke her, didn't it? Mademoiselle Trent, Poirot said. She is a performer, her heart accustomed to the stage's highs and lows. The blood-stained scarf, another of Madame Langley's deceptions, cast suspicion on her. But her confession was her release. She will return to her world, her resilience a mask for her scars. Hastings leaned back, his gaze drifting to the yacht one last time. And Dr. Everett? He seemed so untouched by it all. The doctor, Poirot said. He is a man of science, his emotions cloaked in detachment. His digitalis, stolen by Madame Langley, was the tool of the crime, but he was no accomplice. His notebook, his calm, they were his shield. He will continue, perhaps with a new wariness, but unchanged. The train's whistle sounded, signaling their departure. Poirot rose, adjusting his hat with precision. The Sapphire Yacht, mon ami. It was a stage where each played their part, victim, suspect, witness. The clues, the earring, the cufflink, the clock, the letters, they were the props. But the truth, it was in the hearts. Madame Langley's love for Clara, it drove her to murder, but it also revealed the fragility of those around her. Hastings followed, his heart lighter, but still touched by the tragedy. You see is all, Poirot. The crime, the motives, the people. But do you ever feel the weight of it? Poirot paused, his expression somber. The little grey cells, they seek order, Hastings, but the heart, it feels the...
Rolled by. Hastings felt a sense of closure, tempered by the knowledge that the passengers of the Sapphire Yacht would carry their scars long after the case faded from memory. Poirot, his eyes fixed on the passing fields, seemed already to be turning his mind to new mysteries, his little grey cells ever restless. The Sapphire Yacht receded into the distance, its secrets laid bare, but its story, a tale of love, betrayal, and redemption, would echo in the lives of those who sailed her, and in the quiet brilliance of the man who had unraveled her darkest truth.